Welcome to Offbeat Frontiers, presented by KMFA Classical 89.5 Austin. Offbeat Frontiers brings you conversations with creators pushing the boundaries of the new music and indie classical art scene of Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Jess Griggs. I'm Jess Griggs, and I'm here today in the backyard of Sunny's Backyard on East 7th Street in Austin, Texas. And I'm here today to talk with composer-performer, 2024 KMFA Composer-in-Residence, lover of Sid Meier's civilization and psychological horror films, Sophie Mathieu. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
No, it's super fun to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, and I feel like every time I pronounce a French name, any French speaker cries a little bit. Can you pronounce your name in all of its French glory for me?
Yeah, well, I normally do like a sort of like American French hybrid when I pronounce my name. I usually say Sophie Mathieu. But if you were to say it the full French way, and I'll throw in all my middle names.
Oh, yes.
Just for dramatic effect. My full name in French is Sophie Marie Catherine Nicole Mathieu.
Damn.
There you go.
Yes. How many middle names is that? Three?
Three.
Four?
I've got three. It's a French thing.
Okay, if people were visiting here for only 24 hours,
and
there were no limitations, like all venues were open and everyone was playing a show that night, what would be your perfect, like if they were like, what is the itinerary for Austin? What would be their itinerary that you would give them?
Well, I would want them to come see Middle Satchery, represent, that's my band. But outside of that, I think we have such fantastic like nature in this city. And people are very opinionated on like whether the Texas landscape is like aesthetically pleasing or not. But I think it's like a lot different than what you find in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. And then we have like such fantastic live music here. And I really love the music scene here because it feels so sort of grassroots and homegrown, and there's a big emphasis on like local artists, like especially within like the more classical scene, which is really lovely to see.
Do you have a favorite venue that you like going to versus like a favorite venue that you love playing at in Austin?
I mean, honestly, and I'm not trying to be cute by saying this, but I think for both answers, it's honestly KMFA. Like, it's just such a nice space with such like good acoustics, and I love that there's like lots of parking at
this is not sponsored.
Yeah, no, I'm serious.
So you play in so many bands.
I do.
I feel like I'm gonna miss them all. Can you just list off for me everybody that you're playing with?
Yeah. So currently, on the non-classical side, I play with Middle Satchery, which again,
once again rapping.
And then I play with Maru Haru, which is a fantastic like indie rock group led by James Tabata. And then in the classical scene, I play with Density 512. And then recently I started singing with Panoramic Voices, which has been so much fun.
Yeah, how'd you get into Middle Satchery? How'd you start playing with them?
Yeah, so Hunter, who's the band leader, I know through the UT composition department. We both graduated from there. And he was looking to add some more strings to the band. And I actually had subbed on keys before he did that. Yeah, just like one random gig, I subbed on keys, and it was a really good experience. And so he asked me back to play cello, and then it became like a permanent thing. And so that was, really fun.
Did you have experience playing in bands before, or was it mostly classical?
Yeah, I mean, I had played with pop artists before. I haven't been a member of a band before, but when I was doing my undergraduate degree at USC, you actually can major in popular music there. And the people who were majoring in popular music, they had their like performance class I think it was like every Tuesday or something. And every once in a while they would need like a string section to come play like a power ballad with them. And so I ended up playing with them like almost every week. So so I did quite a few like sort of pop music gigs through that.
Cool,
But yeah, Middle Satchery was my first time sort of being like a member of a band.
Member of the band, And how, like, Do you find that experience different between like kind of like, oh, I'm coming in to play a power ballad versus no, I'm here, I'm part of the band? Is it like more collaborative, you find?
No, absolutely. It is absolutely more collaborative, because I think with the USC pop music department, they're often playing like an already written, done pop song, and they're trying to like replicate it as closely as possible so they can just like learn the technique and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was the same deal for me. It was like try to copy the recording as closely as possible, whereas with Middle Satchry I get a lot more sort of like creative agency to like, Hunter will write the parts, but I'll sort of put my own spin on them. And
totally.
So it's really fun to do that.
I feel like too, also like jump in if you don't feel the same way. Like I feel like Middle Satchry is like really kind of taken off over the last couple months with like, you guys just released an album called Tendencies, like was it 2-3 weeks ago, fairly recently.
Very recently.
And I think I was at the Radio South location and people were like singing along.
People were singing along,
Is that like kind of a surreal experience for
Oh my gosh, it really was. Like that was the first show where I feel like majority of the crowd like sang along to at least part of our show. And it just like, it put such a smile on my face, like knowing that our music has like impacted people and that we've built sort of a fan base at this point that like comes out to our shows and sings along. It's such a cool thing to see.
I hesitate to put like too many hard labels on anything happening in Austin, but like that kind of indie classical scene, that crossover scene, do you find that there's like any unique idioms or tropes that you're seeing in the Austin community right now, Austin arts community?
Yeah, I mean, I think all the groups I'm involved with personally have ties to classical music. Yeah, I love seeing how much like experimentalism there is in sort of the indie classical adjacent sort of scene, and like doing these experimental things, whether it's like extended techniques or experimental harmony or whatever it is, but putting it sort of in this like more accessible package, doing sort of the genre bending thing, which I think is so cool. Like, I mean, genre, like, is that even a relevant label to put on things anymore? Like, it's hard to say these days. Like, I think Middle Satchry especially, we tend to label ourselves as a folk band. But we've kind of got this very classical sound. We've got, a bunch of strings, and we do, extended techniques and stuff, and it's kind of like, you might want to like also label it as new music. Like it's hard to say, and so I think genre is, everything is just merging and colliding.
It's definitely mashing up. Kind of in that same vein, are there any artistic movements or anything that you see in Austin that's really exciting you right now?
Yeah, well, I think that like the new music scene here is so exciting. Like, I think when I first moved back after I did my undergrad, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much smaller than like the LA scene I just came from. Like, what's going on? It's grown so much over just the past like 4 years that I've been back. Like, it's amazing. And I think, there's such an emphasis on like local artists. People are commissioning a lot of like Austin-based composers, which is really amazing to see. The Here Be Monsters program, their name is very apt. They chose that name because Here Be Monsters is like when you don't know when people are mapping things out and they don't know something. They have like an unknown region of the map. They would put Here Be Monsters, and that's kind of like what Austin is, and that's why they chose that name. And I agree with that sentiment 100%. I don't think we're really on the map with the larger trends in the country, but I think what we have here is so cool. It's kind of self-contained, but it's like very, good vibes, very positive people who want to lift each other up and who want to see each other succeed, which is really, I think, a really beautiful thing, and
absolutely
something I'm really into, and it's something I want to stick around and be a part of.
So I want to segue a little bit into your personal music, if that's cool. So I was creeping on your website and looking at your artistic statement that was found on your bio page, and it said your works draw on vastness and places that are uninhabitable by humans, and the intersection between beauty, and danger in the natural world. And I wanted to know what sparked the interest in those dichotomies for you.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say for me, writing music is a form of escapism. And it's been that way my whole life, the whole time I've been composing, I should say, since I was like 12 or 13. I've always loved using art as escapism, and I love nature. And I really love the big vast, like the ocean and like outer space and stuff like that. Places I'll probably never get to go to in a meaningful way. I mean, I guess the ocean, you can go to the beach, but most human beings are not going to get to go to the depths of the ocean and stuff like that. So it's these places for me that are they're out there, they're real, but they're not really accessible to most of us, and a lot of them are largely unexplored. I think there's something really intriguing in that for me personally. And with the beauty and danger dichotomy, I find that so fascinating, and I think it draws back to me being a horror movie fan.
Okay.
Just a horror genre fan, of how, something can be really, beautiful and sort of captivating and on the surface, but you don't know necessarily what's lurking under the surface. If we're talking with the ocean specifically, it's shimmery blue waves, but then it goes down for miles and miles. So there's both of those aspects there, and sort of representing that dichotomy in a musical way, I think gives you so many possibilities for really cool sounds.
Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah. How do you think that translates into your music, either thematically or through composition techniques?
Yeah, for sure. So I really love making sort of shimmery, sparkly, glittery type sounds. I've always loved that. But then sort of subverting that type of I guess traditionally beautiful, and I put that in big air quotes because it means something different to everyone. I'm okay, in what ways can I sort of distort this or have another layer that makes it, as I said, kind of pretty on the surface, but there's something else lurking. I'm really, really into that. One of my favorite horror movies ever is Annihilation with Natalie Portman. I don't know if you know that one.
Only surface level.
So it's based on a book, and so both the movie and the book sort of deal with this theme of it's about sort of an alien meteor thing has crash landed in Florida of all places, of course, and the nature starts sort of mutating in ways that are really sort of beautiful and a kind of intoxicating way to the humans who see it. But there's all this danger in there because it's aliens and it's a horror movie, and so it's things like that where there's sort of this surface level beauty but a level of creepiness or forebodingness. I really love messing around with that.
I have a specific question about one of your more recent compositions, Infinity Songs. You use the text by astrophysicist Ho Chen Wang and Ryan Paradiso. And what drew you to their text? How did you find their text initially?
Great question. So Hao Chen and I went to USC together for undergrad. Hao Chen was double majoring in math and astronomy, but he also was singing in the top choir at USC. So he's a fantastic musician.
One of those multi-talented folks.
I know, it's how are you a real person? So he was singing in the USC Chamber Singers, and he would spend a lot of time hanging out at the music building and was best friends with a few different music people. And so I kind of became acquaintances and then friends with him through some of our mutual connections in the music world. And he graduated a few years before I did, and I sort of reconnected with him during the pandemic, trying to reach out through the internet to people and stay connected and have some semblance of social connections. So I connected with him during the pandemic and was sort of starting to think about this project. It was for my master's thesis, And I had been sort of interested in doing a piece in dialogue with the scientific community for a while. Like, since I write a lot of music about nature, I think it makes sense in that way. I was like, you know, there's this whole community of people out there who like make a living like studying this stuff. Why not like reach out and make that connection? So Hao Chen was sort of my beta test run working with him on this. So he and I had this big long Zoom call where he basically gave me a lecture on the life cycle of stars. Stellar evolution is the technical term, as I learned. So he taught me all about it, and I took notes and like, you know, was a good student. And we talked about like some ways that it might translate into music, and he ended up writing essentially kind of like a documentary script for the narration in the piece. That's super cool, Yeah, and I asked him to like, you know, keep it accessible to your average concert goer, but also like put in some interesting Easter eggs that like people might want to like look up. So that was really interesting to work on that with him. And then Ryan Paradiso, the poet who we brought on as sort of the third collaborator in that project, I sent a cold email to the UT Mishner Center for Writers, just to their like receptionist, and I was like, I like don't know how to reach out to people. Can you forward my work to the like poetry master MFA students, because I would really love to like collaborate with someone on this project. And I got one reply back. It was from Ryan. It was a very enthusiastic reply back, and he was like, yeah, this is right up my alley, I would love to work on this project. So I love that. It was really cool. So I ended up sending him what Hao Chen had written, and I asked him to essentially write a poetic response to Hao Chen's like scientific text. And so Ryan wrote this really fantastic set of poems, and they're sort of in dialogue with each other in the piece itself. There's a narrator that speaks Hao Chen's work, and then there's a soprano that sings Ryan's text.
Are there any other scientific communities or any like communities outside of music that you want to collaborate with on future work?
Yeah, I love collaborating with people outside of music. I love collaborating with poets. I think that's probably some of my favorite collaborations. I'm working on a piece right now with Zach Madison, who's from Invoke, but he's also a fantastic poet in his own right. So that was really fun to sort of go back and forth with him on that poem. I've collaborated with dancers in the past, which is also really interesting. They have like their own like perceptions of music, which I've always found so interesting. Like they really just see it in a totally different way than I ever have, and they used like different terminology to talk about it. So I always find that so much fun whenever I have an opportunity to work with dancers. But even outside of like the arts, like I would love to do more collaborations. I come from a family of engineers, and like computer science people. So I've often thought about like, where are the common threads there? And it's definitely something I want to explore more, but haven't had a chance to do a ton so far.
It's not like you're not playing in 4 bands. So I do want to talk about the KMFA Composer-in-Residence, if that's okay. So you are KMFA's 2024 Composer-in-Residence.
Yeah, very excited.
And it's kind of an old-fashioned residency because it's with a radio station.
For sure.
It's a revival of kind of an old thing. Do you find that there's any puzzles or challenges that you're trying to figure out being commissioned by a radio station?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because I think the piece I'm working on for KMFA, it's for Austin Unconducted, fantastic local string orchestra. I think with the string orchestra medium, it's like pretty intuitive to make it radio friendly. But I've been like really like thinking about that a lot with like the other pieces I'm working on, like especially with this choir commission I'm working on for Panoramic Voices with Zach.
Are there any sneak peeks that you can provide us on like the inspiration for the KMFA commission?
Yes,
yeah,
I can. So I'm really inspired by nature at nighttime.
Okay.
And I love how, like, at night, nature is kind of at its most uninterrupted. And, you know, we humans, we kind of go back into our houses and go to sleep.
Yeah.
But a lot of nature is like waking up at nighttime and is like doing its own thing, completely separate from, you know, the human activity that goes on during the day, and sort of exploring that as a concept, and sort of this like darker nighttime music that also is filled with like some activity. Yeah, and that's something else where I'm like really curious about, like potentially reaching out to a local scientist, because I really want to kind of base it on our local ecosystem here in Central Texas.
Outside of the KMFA commission, what are you looking forward to next with your own creative output?
Yeah, so I'm working on a piece for Panoramic Voices right now, as I mentioned, in collaboration with Zach Madison, sort of around the subject of climate change. The concert that this piece is going on is it's going to be paired with like the Mozart Requiem. And so Julie Orlandini, the director of Panoramic Voices, was asking me to sort of respond to the theme of like grief and loss, and I was like, oh well, I feel like I'm constantly grieving for our natural environment with like climate change going on and people seeming so apathetic to it. You know, it's been an emotional process, I think, for a lot of us, seeing even how in our own like Central Texas environment, the weather has been even weirder than normal Texas weather is. And, you know, things have been really dry. And then we had, you know, of course, in 2021, the big ice snowmageddon, whatever people call it. Like, I mean, there's like plant life that still hasn't bounced back from that. And that's all, you know, climate change related. And so that's that piece. And then I'm working on another sort of tangentially climate change related piece for Invoke. That's going to be about the Bastrop fire that happened in, I think it was in like 2011. I mean, that fire was a result of, you know, human actions and climate change and whatnot. That we had like one of the driest summers on record that year, and a power line went down and the whole county pretty much was set ablaze as a result, and we lost these old growth pine forests, which was devastating to the local ecosystem. But in recent years, it's been bouncing back, which is really positive to see, really encouraging. And so that piece is going to be a little bit more of an optimistic look about how a community has come together to help this ecosystem start rebuilding. And yeah, exactly.
Well, that brings us to the end. Are there any pluggables that you want to plug?
Any pluggables I want to plug? Yeah, I mean, go check out Middle Satchery's new album, Tendencies. Maruharu, my other band, just released a single, Still Remember. It's really fantastic. And yeah, my website is where you can find all my music. I also have a very small YouTube channel that also has some of my works on it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for bringing us to Sunny's backyard, which is great. And yeah,
thanks for having me, Jess.